So there's been word going around that PM&R is not a hidden specialty anymore. It's now a very popular specialty that a lot of medical students want to apply into. Everybody knows that it has pretty decent work-life balance compared to most other competitive specialties, and also it's a very rewarding and fulfilling job. So they call it a specialty that is a hidden gem no more. But is that really the truth? In this video, I want to talk to you guys about the data of the most recent match and go over the statistics, the numbers, the actual percentages, and overall get a better picture of how competitive it actually is to match into PM&R starting in 2025. What's up, everybody? My name is Luigi Gonzales and I'm a first year PM&R resident. My goal for this channel is to show you guys what medical was like, what residency is like, and educate you more on PM&R and what it is as a field and what it takes to get in there. Overall, I want to show you guys what being a physician is like and just give you the reality of what that whole journey is like overall. So with that said, let's get right into the video. So taking a look at the data, we have to start with the overall picture and not just focus on PM&R for now. So right here, we're going to take a look at the data for all active applicants for residency, meaning U.S. medical students, U.S. MDs, DOs, there's the international medical students, just everything. And if you look at this trend all the way back from 2016 to now, the number of applicants for all different types of medical students is increasing. And I think that has to play a factor in terms of the overall competitiveness of not just PM&R, but most of the other residencies in general, where the number of students applying for a certain spot is increasing by a lot, but the number of open spots for that specialty isn't increasing in as fast of a rate. And I feel like that's what creates this whole bottleneck situation with getting into competitive residencies. So, with that said, if there's a lot of people applying for a certain spot, let's say orthopedics, very, very competitive, one of the most competitive specialties that you can apply into currently. If you don't match into orthopedics, or if you feel like you're not as competitive in orthopedics, even though you have amazing stats overall, you're gonna think of backup specialties to apply into. And I feel like that's where people who aren't really as passionate about a certain specialty end up going into that field. It's because they match there instead. This also begs into question the whole process of how matching works, where if you apply for multiple specialties, you won't really know until the day of match day what specialty you're going to be doing and where you're going to be doing it in. So, there's a lot of different factors that come into play when saying a specialty is becoming more and more competitive, and one of it is definitely this increasing number of applicants each year. So part two is going to be looking into the overall, just the overall numbers specifically for PM&R now. And we're going to start off by looking at the US MDs. And unfortunately, the only data that I could find with the most recent match release is the data of this current year and also the previous years. So it's just seeing a 1-year trend, basically. And if you look at PM&R right now, it is listed number 4 as one of the, in terms of the percentage of match rate. And right now it's saying that it's 85% match rate, which means that if 100 people apply for PM&R, 85 of them are going to end up going into PM&R, while the rest are not going to be accepted into a residency program. And that's a gauge of how competitive a specialty really is. Again, one of the most competitive ones, orthopedic surgery, dermatology is always up there too. And you can see the match rates for those specialties are much lower. And again, this is just US MDs. I know for a lot of specialties, there tends to be a advantage for US MDs compared to other types of doctors. Hopefully that's something that's going to change in the future, because like everybody's getting the same medical training, and I feel like there is just that stigma between MDs and DOs in the United States. But I feel like that's something that is slowly improving, but it is taking a while. So with that said, PM&R is 85% this past application cycle for MDs, and in the previous year it stayed the same. It's also 85%. So not much change in terms of the competitiveness of getting into PM&R for MDs in the past 2 application cycles now. Now looking at the DOs, PM&R is listed as having a 70% match rate. Again, as I mentioned previously, there is that stigma between MDs and DOs. It could also be the connection between MD medical school programs are more often affiliated with a hospital or with a home PM&R program, which increases their likelihood of matching there. Whereas for DOs, sometimes they might not be affiliated with a PM&R program, which makes it harder to expose yourself to different programs and end up matching there. So with that said, for the DOs, 70% match rate. The previous year it was 73. So a little bit less, but I don't know if I would really call that a significant decrease in the match rate for PM&R. But yeah, if you compare the overall, match rate percentages, not just for PM&R, but for most of the specialties, like the more specialized residencies, it's definitely much lower compared to MDs. And again, the stigma with DOs. But now we're going to take a look at the match rate percentages for US IMGs. And if I'm not mistaken, US IMGs are the medical schools that are within US territory. So more specifically, the Caribbean medical schools. There's also some schools that I believe they go to Australia to do some of their training and then they come back here and finish up medical school. So I think those are the ones that are considered US IMGs, if I'm not mistaken. And the match rates for that with PM&R, it's 50%, and it's actually increased from the previous year where it was only 46%. So if you take a look at that, it's a 4% change. Again, with the DOs where it decreased by 3%, I didn't consider that as a really big difference. With this increase by 4%, I wouldn't really say that that's a really big difference either. So, overall, I feel like the match rate percentage between the past two application cycles for PM&R have stayed relatively the same. Like, if you want to see what I would consider a big change, if you look at dermatology here, 35% the previous year and then 11% this past cycle, that's a pretty big change. So, I'm not seeing that big of a jump with PM&R. So that means that over the past couple of years, I wouldn't really say that PM&R has been getting more and more competitive. And I know there's also a non-US IMG type of medical students, but unfortunately I couldn't find that data. So those are all of the data that I'm able to show for this video. But now I wanted to give you guys my overall takeaways and what I think is important when looking at all of these. And if you're somebody applying to PM&R soon, some things that you should think about as well. So if you're a medical student interested in PM&R and you're hearing all of these things, how competitive it's getting, how it's hard to match now, honestly, my best advice to you would be, if you're truly passionate about PM&R, let that shine. Don't let anything distract you or scare you off from applying into the field, because at the end of the day, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And if you take a look at my videos and my application, the competitiveness aspect that most people usually think about are scores, grades, like if you're honoring a lot of your rotations, and then extracurricular activities, leadership, research, all of those things. I wouldn't say I'm really the most competitive applicant out there, but I didn't let that scare me off from applying in the first place. And I feel like that's the right mindset to go into it. Obviously, if you don't feel like you're as competitive as you should be, definitely, especially if you have time, like if you're just starting your third year, definitely keep your head down, work as hard as you can in your rotations, get as much honors as you can to increase your chances of matching, do as well as you can on step 2. But ultimately, remember that PM&R is a field that does more of a holistic review of its applicants. It's not a field that just looks at scores and gauges your competency as a healthcare professional based off of those. And I feel like the most important thing for PM&R is a true dedication to the field. You're able to connect with a lot of the other PM&R residents, residency programs, whoever you meet along the way. And that means doing away rotations, going to conferences to network, and just overall being you and finding where you best fit in terms of all of the different PM&R programs out there. So I feel like just making sure that you're not trying too hard, but at the same time, you're putting your best foot forward whenever you are in those away rotations. I know it could be pretty nerve-wracking, especially with the whole mindset that, oh man, my chances of matching in this program fully depend on how well I do in this 1 month with them. But you don't want that to deter you from not being your true self and from, sometimes when people try too hard, it comes off the wrong way. So you want to make sure you avoid that as well. But overall, I would say that PM&R is competitive, but I wouldn't say that it's something that is drastically much more competitive now compared to what it was a year or maybe even 2 years ago. When I found out about PM&R late in my second year, almost early in my third year, around that time period, people were already saying that it was competitive, and that was like 2 years ago. So I feel like this whole concept of, oh, the field is a hidden gem, but it's being more and more popular now. I want to say that the increasing number of people that are aware of PM&R and the number of people that are applying to PM&R could just be correlated to the number of people getting into medical school and going into medicine in the first place. But with that said, it is my goal to increase awareness for medical students, for future patients, everybody of the field of PM&R, because of all the benefits that it can provide and how it can help so many people if they're aware of what we offer. So I just feel like if you're true to yourself, if you're able to put your best foot forward and get as much away rotations as you can, that will definitely increase your chances of matching into PM&R. But at the same time, don't worry too much about these numbers. Don't worry too much about these statistics. Every specialty is probably saying similar things about their own specialty and their own field, because there is that sense of pride where, oh yeah, we're getting more competitive. Like, you just feel very happy and prideful that, wow, I managed to get into this field and now it's really competitive. So I feel like a lot of specialties say that, but for me, my mindset is I want to be able to help a lot of med students out. And like, as happy as I am to hear that, wow, the field that I'm in is pretty competitive, I also want to reassure you guys that, with proper mentorship, good connections, and just being a good person overall, you are going to be able to match into PM&R. Just make sure that you put your best foot forward, seek out mentorship, get as much help as you can. There's a lot of free resources for PM&R specifically online. Me personally, there's the AAP, the Association of Academic Physiatrists. They do a lot of webinars. AAPM&R is the American Association of PM&R. I'm in an organization called PAPA, which is for Filipino Americans in Physiatry, and that's not specifically like you have to be Filipino to join. We do a lot of like webinars for people out there, and I feel like a lot of our content is more geared towards international medical students, because that is something that is lacking in terms of the support. So it's nice to have an organization that's able to do that. And there's a lot of other organizations out there. You just got to make sure to look for it and seek it out and be proactive with it. And I feel like that's a big first step in learning how to network and just increasing your involvement within PM&R. And I feel like for med students, that's one of the most important things you can do. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. I know it's a lot of information, a lot of scary numbers, but again, the main message that I want to share is to not worry too much about it. If you're passionate about PM&R, let that be the guiding light, let that shine, and other programs, other residency programs are going to be sure to see that, and hopefully that will help you match into wherever you want to go. If you guys are looking for more one-on-one mentorship, feel free to follow me on Instagram and reach out to me there. I like to do scheduled 30-minute appointments with people through my Calendly on my Instagram bio, so you can sign up whenever you'd like. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.